Are you stuck on caffeine? Are you thinking, I think I might want to go off of it for a while, but maybe you're feeling like, how in the world will I function without it? I understand how you feel. I felt that way. I was right in that position about 90 days ago, a little over 90 days ago. And I was thinking, can I do this? But ultimately I decided, yep, I'm doing it. I'm stopping caffeine altogether. And I ripped it off like a Band-Aid, stopped cold turkey. Hi, I'm JT, Jared Taylor. I'm a certified health coach and I specialize in longevity. Thank you for joining me today. I like caffeine, I have to be honest. I like it. I like the zip, zip, zippity zip, the energy boost that it gives me, and I like the help focusing that I feel when I'm consuming caffeine. But I don't like the crash that comes later. For me, that has become an issue. I'm not overly worried about caffeine in general from a health perspective, but for various reasons, I've decided to just stop it altogether. And so today I'm going to share with you 4 things. 1, how much caffeine I was getting. 2, where was it coming from? And 3, why I decided to just give it up. And 4, what are the results? What are the ultimate results of stopping caffeine altogether? So let's talk about number 1. How much was I getting? I was getting about 100 to 150 and sometimes 200 milligrams of caffeine per day. And you're thinking, man, you're a lightweight. That's true, right? For some people, that's like hardly any at all. That's barely anything. I mean, to put it in perspective, if you drink coffee, the average amount of caffeine in a brewed coffee is about 80 to 100 milligrams of caffeine. So I guess comparatively speaking, I was getting about 1 to 1.5 to 2 cups of the equivalent of coffee per day, right? I'm not a coffee drinker, but let's take that a little bit further. If you were to go to Starbucks and get the 12 to 16 ounce version of your favorite mixture, your favorite concoction from Starbucks, you could be getting as much as 310 milligrams or more of caffeine. So for me, it's hard to imagine that much caffeine because I don't know if I could do it. It would be like, woo, I don't know if I could handle that. Well, I mentioned I'm not a coffee drinker, so where was I getting my caffeine? I got it mostly from zero sugar energy drinks. And sometimes, occasionally, I would slip in a diet soda, like a Diet Dr. Pepper or Diet Coke or Diet Mountain Dew, something like that. I don't do soda very often, and as a rule, I try to avoid it altogether, but every once in a while, give myself a little bit of a treat. So going back to the amount of caffeine, I just want to make this point really quick before I move on. If you are accustomed to that higher levels of caffeine, right, that 310 milligrams or even more, it might be comforting for you to know that according to the Mayo Clinic, they say that experts agree that up to about 400 milligrams per day may be safe for most adults. So they're saying, for most adults, up to 400 milligrams a day is probably okay. However, they do point out if you have side effects like dizziness or jitteriness or headaches, then you might want to reevaluate the amount of caffeine that you're getting. And that brings me to why I decided to stop. Because even on that small amount that I was getting, I was experiencing side effects, and it got to a point where I just decided that the benefit did not outweigh the cost. So let's talk about some of these side effects. Number 1, I would just get that zip, right? That zip would last for a few hours, and then I would have this pretty significant crash. And I would feel just lethargic and really out of it for several hours after that. And after a while, I started asking myself, is it really worth it? Another thing that was happening is I started having problems sleeping. Not always, but every once in a while I'd have problems sleeping, and I would lay awake at night thinking that was probably the caffeine. And it wasn't probably the caffeine. I knew it was the caffeine. I have to mention it didn't happen all the time, but it was happening frequently enough that I would be, didn't have a very good night's sleep. And then the next day I'd be like, oh man, wake up. And the first thing I'm thinking about is where am I going to get my caffeine? I start to feel like a little bit like a junkie. I don't like that feeling. I don't like that feeling that I feel, reliant on it. And that started kind of raising red flags in my mind. It's like, I don't want to be in that position. So the other thing that was happening is that, I have to talk about this, is that I have struggled with depression for most of my life, about 40 years since I was in high school. And for the last 10 years, I've gotten most of it under control. I mean, I rarely have any issues with depression for the last several years. And most of that is because I started changing my diet, right? The last 5 years, last 6 years, I should say, has been incredibly awesome, like almost completely depression-free. But I have noticed that when I'm consuming caffeine on a regular basis, even the small amounts that I've just talked about, it can be a trigger. It can be a trigger for me to have some bouts of depression. But I've lived with it long enough to know, oh, I could see that, oh, it's the caffeine, just wait for it to pass. But again, I started to ask myself, is it really worth it? I really don't want to feel this way anyways, and I don't want to, I've worked so hard to figure out how to maintain a kind of a healthy mental state. I don't want to add in factors that might put that in at risk or put that at jeopardy. And that started to happen. So that was another reason that, for me to decide, reevaluate whether or not I should be drinking caffeine at all. Hey, if you liked today's video, please hit the like button. Thank you. To top it off, I started having some acid reflux. And I've never had to deal with acid reflux for most of my life. Just in the last few years, though, it started to crop up. And I have noticed a very strong correlation to caffeine. It's one of my triggers. As we get older in general, stomach acids, your stomach becomes less acidic. Everyone's different, and it happens at varying degrees for different people. As that happens, you might more frequently experience acid reflux when consuming certain foods or for different reasons. It was getting so bad that it was waking me up at night, and that also contributed to a lack of sleep. One of the ways that I would address this would drink some apple cider vinegar, and it goes away immediately. Apple cider vinegar, absolutely, for me, it absolutely helps with acid reflux. That's a topic for a different video, but that's what I was doing, and it would help. But over time, it just got more and more pronounced, and I just got tired of it. So all those things kind of like piled up one at a time, and it made me realize, you know what, this is just not worth it. So I decided to stop. I went cold turkey, rip it off like a Band-Aid, no more caffeine. And the first week was hard. The first week was very difficult. The second week was hard, but not quite as bad as the first week. But after that, I started feeling a lot better and not really even thinking about it. And now, what's it like now? What are the result of doing that? Well, now I have an even amount of energy. And as long as I'm exercising on a regular basis, I am able to maintain good amounts of energy throughout the day, which is, most of my life I've exercised regularly, but I'm not doing these super spikes of energy, right? And then these crashes. And I really enjoy that. Do I miss that spike in energy sometimes? Yeah, I do. But I'd rather have a lower level of continuous energy than having these spikes and these crashes. I like to avoid the crash. The other thing I can say is that I sleep much better. I have very few nights where I have a problem sleeping. And the little to no depressive episodes at all. Right? That little trigger I have eliminated, and that's helped tremendously. The other thing I can say is acid reflux, gone. Sometimes there's a tiny, tiny little bit of a, flare up, but most of the time, not a problem. And it is a very dramatic difference. It is so dramatic that I can see, oh, I was taking caffeine or drinking caffeine and I've had acid reflux. And it was getting really, really bad. Stop caffeine and that comes down. It's undeniable for me, right? So those are the reasons that I stopped, and that's the result of stopping. Will I ever go back and maybe one day do some caffeine here and there? Maybe, I don't know. But I am definitely gonna avoid taking it or consuming it on a regular basis. That's my experience. What about you? Do you have an experience of, similar experience where you've taken caffeine or you've consumed caffeine and you consume it, and then decided to stop it for whatever reason? I'd love to hear about your experience. Tell me why you decided to discontinue it, or tell me why, hey, you know what? I don't have a problem with that. And this has been my experience. I haven't had those issues at all, and I'm gonna keep taking it, whatever. I'd love to hear your experience in the comments below, so please let me know. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.